If my future were determined just by my performance on a standardized test, I wouldn't be here. I guarantee you that. If I told you the former First Lady of the United States said this quote, would you believe me? Well, you should. Michelle Obama is just one of millions of people who have had negative experiences with standardized testing. She is also one of millions of people who did not believe that standardized tests are an accurate representation of someone's intelligence. Michelle Obama and I definitely seem to be on the same page. As far back as I can remember, whenever I would sit down to take a test, an enormous wave of anxiety would overcome me. I would be sweating but also have the chills all at once. My brain seemed to just freeze. According to the American Test Anxieties Association, 16 to 20% of students have high test anxiety, and it affects more than 10 million students in North America, making it the most prevalent scholastic impairment in our schools today. Keeping this statistic in mind, that means a lot of you in the audience suffer from this as well, or know someone who suffers from this. Well, you're not alone. Testing anxiety has ultimately affected my entire life thus far. It affected my test scores and grades, my decisions of where I should go to college, and most importantly, it affected my confidence and how others perceived me. I always thought I was one of the dumb kids because the other students could finish their exams quicker than me. When I went to take the ACT, I couldn't even finish one section of the test in a timely manner, right after I went outside and sat there and cried. I remembered thinking to myself, I can't believe this one test score and the test scores from my previous standardized tests throughout my schooling were ultimately going to be what held me back from attending the colleges that I wanted to. It didn't seem fair, it didn't seem logical, and I knew I couldn't be the only one who was struggling. This is why I have you all here today. I want to talk to you about how unreliable standardized testing is and how it is not an accurate measurement of one's intelligence or abilities. Standardized testing can be described as any examination that's administered and scored in a predetermined standard manner. There are two major kinds of standardized tests: aptitude tests and achievement tests. Standardized aptitude tests predict how well students are likely to perform in some subsequent educational setting. The most common examples are the SAT and the ACT, both of which attempt to forecast how well high school students perform in college. Standardized testing is not an accurate measurement of one's intelligence or capabilities because standardized tests occur in an artificial learning environment. Standardized tests are limiting and don't value diversity and creativity, and because they create unusual amounts of stress, which is psychologically and physically harmful. Standardized testing occurs in an artificial environment. What I mean by an artificial environment is that these tests are timed. You can't talk to fellow students and you can't use references or learning devices. How often does the real world really look like this? It doesn't. Standardized testing does not represent how the real world is. According to the book, The Myths of Standardized Tests, Why They Don't Tell You What They Think They Do, written by Philip Harris, Bruce M. Smith, and Joan Harris, as psychometrician Daniel Cortez puts it, scores on a standardized test usually do not provide a direct and complete measure of educational achievement. Tests can measure only a portion of the goals of education, which are necessarily broader and more inclusive than the test could possibly be. Clearly, standardized tests are limited and do not show a student's full potential. Because standardized tests occur in an artificial environment, this leads to reducing the richness of human experience and human learning to a number or a set of numbers. According to Peter Tate, measuring intelligence through examination is inevitably as limited as the examination itself. Whilst it might prove a reasonable sieve, perhaps even the best we can provide, it will not identify many of those we instinctively know to be intelligent. For example, a student may have a deep knowledge of a particular subject, but receive no acknowledgement for it because they've gotten a lower test score than others. If the student were able to draw a picture, lead a group discussion, or create a hands-on project, they could show that knowledge, but not through standardized testing, because standardized tests do not even offer students to answer any sort of question this way. Aside from an artificial environment, standardized tests are limiting and don't value diversity or creativity. People are different and people test differently. People have different cultural backgrounds, different learning and thinking styles, different family backgrounds, and different mental struggles. That being said, standardized testing still treats everyone as if they were identical. Not one person is the same, and most people don't test the same. I don't test the same as someone who doesn't have testing anxiety, and 9 times out of 10, the person who doesn't have testing anxiety is going to score higher than I am. With that, even if I have the same level of education as the other person, standardized tests are limited assessments. Therefore, those who are great at testing are always going to be more successful than those who aren't, even if they have the same education. People express their intelligence differently, and it is unfair for anyone to judge someone else's intelligence or abilities off of an exam that does not let students express their intelligence in different ways. Peter Tate states that we might as well ask, are our schools guilty of promoting a passive form of intelligence, asking what do you know rather than what can you do, simply because of limitations of assessments? We might also pause to recognize that many intelligent people may lack the very qualities that we need from our leaders, be it emotional intelligence, wisdom, or even common sense. Ability, talent, intelligence, and all the above cannot stand on their own. They need setting alight to have any value. Along with diversity, standardized tests do not value creativity. A student could write an incredible answer in the margins of a test and it wouldn't even matter. Human beings don't even grade these exams. A creative response that may be incredible won't even be seen. And if it doesn't match the gradings criteria, it won't even matter. Standardized tests don't value characteristics that are real and valuable in everyday life. According to Gerald Bracey, some of the biggies that we don't generally even try to use standardized tests to measure include creativity, resilience, motivation, persistence, endurance, enthusiasm, self-awareness, and leadership. Surely, these are attributes we all want our children to acquire in some degree, and while not all learning takes place in classrooms, these are real and valuable achievements. Shouldn't schools pursue goals such as these for their students along with the usual academic goals? Of course, a teacher can't really teach all of these things from a textbook. Keeping that in mind, when researching what students had to say about standardized testing, I came across a high school student named Bella. She stated that there has to be a better way to measure the performance of students because tests cause a lot of stress. Some students may do well on tests because they're just great test takers, while other kids may be super bright but tend to get distracted easily. Bella makes a very valid point. Now, besides an artificial environment and not valuing diversity or creativity, standardized tests cause an obscene amount of stress, which is psychologically and physically harmful. Some perform well under stress, and others crumble. According to the American Institute for Learning and Human Development, brain research suggests that too much stress is psychologically and physically harmful. When stress becomes overwhelming, the brain shifts into a fight or flight response, impossible to engage in high-order thinking processes that are necessary to respond correctly to standardized testing questions. Since students become so stressed before and during these standardized tests, they will do anything to succeed. When stressed, students will fall back on anything to help them score well. Students will cheat, take performance drugs, try to memorize questions so they can score well. This is not an accurate representation of one's intelligence. All in all, standardized testing is most certainly not an accurate measurement of one's intelligence and abilities. This is because standardized tests occur in artificial learning environments. They are limiting and don't value diversity and creativity, and they create obscene amounts of stress. Tests don't define you, and although it is hard not to let them defeat you, you are not alone in your journey. You don't need to be a good test taker to be a good human being. Hopefully soon we can pick up on the great alternatives for standardized testing and bring them into reality. Thank you.